You asked for it, and we listened.
Welcome to Hi-Fi. I'm Marcos, this is Kurt, and today we've got a hell of a treat for you. We're doing a big three showdown of the NAD M10v2, the Naim Uniti Atom, and the Cambridge Audio EVO 150. Why are these the big threes? Arguably, these are some of the most popular all-in-one players that are on the market right now.
This is our first comparison video, which seems to be a lot of work. So if you like it, please subscribe and hit that like button. So the rules are simple. We're going to rate it out of 5. The winner gets a 5, and everything else is based on that reference. And if you watch our other videos, the categories are going to be based on the same thing.
As you all know, this trio are all-in-one digital music players. They all feature similar tech, and they all kind of do the same job. First on the list will be the NAD M10v2, rated at 100 watts per channel, priced at $3,800 Canadian or around $2,800 USD. We've got the Naim Uniti Atom, rated at 40 watts per channel, priced at $4,800 Canadian or around $3,500 USD. And right in the middle, we've got the Cambridge Audio EVO 150, rated at 150 watts per channel, priced at $4,200 Canadian, or around $3,100 USD. The first thing we'll be looking at is the overall build quality of each unit.
So we awarded the winner the Naim. And the reason for this is the overall build quality. When compared to the rest, it feels a lot more heftier, and it is actually indeed heavier. And one thing is the little details. You can see all that thick aluminum casing in the front, on the top, and even the heat sinks on the side. We also thought the display, actually, I think was a lot better in this than compared to the others. And also to even the overall build of the unit. So when turning that volume control, there's almost no play at all in that volume control. And it's also like just smooth.
Coming in at a score of 4.5 is the Cambridge Audio EVO 150. The overall build of the EVO 150 is really nice. And the one thing that stuck out to us the most is the interchangeable wood paneling and also the tactile source selector and volume control.
And based on the other scores, the NAD comes in at a 4. And the reason for that is I think in comparable, it may not have the heft that the others do, but the way that the screen kind of just fills the entire unit. And one thing, I think it's the slickest looking out of them all.
The second category is the overall setup of the units.
So the winner of the category and the score of 5 is the NAD M10. The reason for this is, I think in the hi-fi world, it's the most polished app. When you're setting it up, it's one of the only ones that actually guides you through kind of like a wizard, where it's almost like a step-by-step to help you get through the process. And also the app is really easy to navigate compared to the others, especially when you're using Tidal on there. One thing is Tidal, even when you're using the search on it, it's the only one that I think really keeps intact like the original experience on Tidal. So what I do like on the software, on the Blue OS, is that it really keeps everything intact. So whether in Tidal you're using the search functions within the app itself, it kind of maintains that same consistency. I find a lot of the other units is when you're using the search, it doesn't populate it properly as compared to what's found in the Blue OS.
Coming in at 4 out of 5 rating are both the Cambridge Audio EVO 150 and the Naim Uniti Atom. The reason why they came in at a tie is because the setup is quite good, but they both have their quirks. One thing I really like with the Cambridge Audio EVO 150 is the graphic interface of that app is really good. It's nice and clean, it's pretty easy, but I find it's pretty light on information. So when it comes to the Naim app, it's a lot more simple looking, it's a little bit rough around the edges, but one thing that I really like, if you do select an album, you can hit the I logo and it will show you a whole bunch of information about that album. So if you're a big music lover and you like to really dig deep, the Naim app might be better. Coming in as our third category will be features. Not only the physical features, but also the digital features. Scoring a 5 out of 5 will be the Cambridge EVO 150. The reason why, the Cambridge EVO 150 is very feature rich. So it has balanced inputs, moving magnet phonostage, both A and B speaker zones, and many different inputs for digital and analog. Also to note, it does have a headphone output as well.
Coming in second at a score of 4.5 is the NAD M10. When it comes to inputs and actually features, it's probably one of the least out of the bunch. And the reason why we're scoring it quite high and right after the Cambridge is Dirac on there. So a lot of you guys might not know what that is room correction. And people that need it, this is actually, I think, a big feature that I wish the others had.
Coming in third place is the Naim Uniti Atom, scored at 3.5 out of 5. Why is that? It's because the Naim Uniti Atom is pretty feature light. The biggest feature about it, I would say, is the HDMI ARC input. When you consider all the rest of its inputs, it only has a single analog in and a pre-out, whereas the NAD also has dual sub-outs. One thing with the Uniti Atom though, it does have a 1/4 inch headphone socket and multiple USB inputs if you want to add some hard drives or USB sticks.
So one of our categories, just like in our other videos, is our low and high volume test. This time we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to do it more on long term. So we're going to play a full bandwidth track that's got a lot of bass, and we're going to see how it performs over a longer period of time. So starting with a low volume, the winner of this, which is in a score of 5, was the Naim Uniti Atom. The thing is, at low volumes, at that 60 dB, which is normal conversation level, just find that you just hear everything the most. It seemed to have the most texture, and especially in the bass region, it was really still quite authoritative at those lower levels.
Rated out of 4 is the Cambridge Audio EVO 150. We just found when listening compared to the Naim, it was just a little bit less authoritative on the bottom end, and it just didn't seem to be as commanding.
Coming in at third with only half a point difference between the Cambridge at a 3.5, it was really quite close in low volume listening. The only difference is, I would say, is the bass was just that little bit better on Cambridge, and the reason why it scored a little bit lower.
When it came time to our high volume listening test, we did a little bit differently this time. So we measured it at a full bandwidth for over a minute long. Coming in at a rating of 5 is the Cambridge Audio EVO 150. It maintained a respectable 86 decibels in our listening room. What really stood out with it is how composed it was and how articulated the bass presence was and everything else. It was really good.
And coming in second with a score of 4.5 was the Naim. Rated at the lowest power at 40 watts, actually hit 83 decibels, which was almost the same amount as the NAD and only 3 decibels less than the Cambridge Audio. And sometimes it shows you that sometimes wattage, really what's rated on their manufacturer's specification, doesn't always relate to real world conditions. At louder levels, the Naim was probably the most easy to listen to, with probably the least amount of fatigue. And across the bandwidth, when it comes to the bass and the top end, nothing really broke down.
Coming in at third place was the M10, which maintained a pretty high 83.5 decibel. The reason why we rated it in third place was because we found at the higher volume levels, it did seem to compress the bass or almost kind of cut it down a little bit. So that's why it came into third. Our next category will be musical performance. When it came down to considering musical performance, we want to know the performance of each amplifier across many different genres of music, and the genres will be contrasting each other. So we're looking at jazz, EDM, and rock. First category is jazz. We listened to Vince Guaraldi and Bolasset, the song called Ginza Samba. This is not typically like a true jazz song, more like a bossa nova song. And what I really like about it, right at the start of it, it starts off quite quiet and builds up and Vince Guaraldi starts playing the piano, and it's impactful. It's nice, it's jammy, and I really like the flow of this song.
So our favorite in this category, and giving a score out of 5, was the Naim. When listening to this recording, you can tell it's really mixed and sounding like it's more of a smaller venue. And you really have the piano just kind of right on center, and the strings on the right, and then percussion on the left. One thing is what kind of made this Naim really stand out is on the rim tap. You can really tell that he rested the butt of the stick close to the edge. And this is something that I think the Naim just does so well in terms of texturing that I felt it did compared to the other ones. And one of the biggest things too is just even in the detail, and again just the way that the strings sounded. There was just so much texture than the others, again making the Naim just really stand out in this category. One thing you can really notice is when they're using the sustain pedal or holding their keys. It becomes a lot more apparent. The Naim is just able to really just really pick it up more, and it becomes a lot more noticeable, which I think was just a really good strength of this unit. And the Cambridge Audio coming in at second, in which we scored this at 4. Things sounded, I would say in comparison, sounded a little bit more cleaner sounding, but that's the thing is why we both felt that it was under the Naim. Is because the Naim just sounded a little more live, and a little bit extra texturing is why we put it just under. However, though, if you like a little more cleaner, accurate sound, the Cambridge is also another good option. The NAD coming in at 3.5, so really close to the Cambridge. And the reason why we say this because sonically on jazz, it sounded really close, for the exception of the bass. I think the bass was a little bit more controlled, and we can both agree that it was a little bit more present. Reason why it just slightly came in behind at that 3.5.
The second song we listened to, we decided to pick an EDM or dance track. And the song we picked was Armin van Buuren and Shivers, which kind of was a throwback for me because I kind of grew up listening to trance music, dance music like this. So I really enjoyed it. One thing I really love about these old school dance tracks is just they start off heavy hitting and fast. The bass is impactful. There's a lot of spatial effect, and then they always in the middle dive right down and get really quiet, and they have this big build until it picks back up again. And I always love listening to tracks like this. They get my heart thumping and my legs moving for sure.
And taking the top spot with a score of 5 was the Cambridge Audio. I think when it comes to EDM, I just like when the backgrounds, the distortion are just so low, which the Cambridge Evo has. And because it's got such well control of the bass, it just sounds better when things sound a little bit more accurate and really tight and precise sounding. So we really had to give it to the Cambridge Audio on this one. And coming in second, we give it to the M10. Really similar sound to the Cambridge Audio in the way of presentation. Again, it's just that bass. I think the Cambridge Audio just has a little bit more fuller in that bass. So when it comes to EDM, it just creates a little bit, again, a little bit more body and heft to the music. And that's the reason we only scored it at half a point less at 4.5. And in third, with a score of 4, we gave it to the Naim. I think, in a lot of ways, some people actually might like the way it sounds better on the Naim, just because Naim is a little bit more diffused. But again, for us, I think that's why we kind of just gave it a little bit less. But you know what? There would be surprised that some of you guys actually might prefer it better for EDM. And with the Naim, because things are a little bit more diffused, it's just having that darker color or that jet black low distortion background in both the Naim and the NAD. Things just don't really seem to pop out as much. And again, for EDM, that's kind of what you want.
And lastly, when it came to listening to the rock, we threw it back to the 90s, Pearl Jam, and the song we listened to was Why Go. And why did we pick this song? It's super busy, it's got a lot going on. It seems like they threw all kinds of distortion and reverb on everything, every single instrument, and it just has this crazy energy to it. The drums are impactful, the vocals are loud and clear, and the guitar is just right up in your face. When it came down to this tune, Kurt and I really came to a crossroads, and we had to give the same score to two different amps. I personally picked the Cambridge Audio Evo 150 as my number 5. The reason why, I just thought it kind of cleaned things up a little bit. The snap of the drums was a little bit cleaner. It didn't sound quite as distorted or quite as like live, I guess. So to me, it sounded a little bit more listenable in a weird way.
For me, I do think it was close. However, the reason why I think we have to do this at a tie and give the name like at least the same score is because it was just a lot more, to me, a lot more live sounding. The thing is, especially when you're listening to rock and anything like that, things are not supposed to sound as pinpoint, and they purposely put in a lot of distortion and stuff in there to make things sound a little bit more diffused. Everything a little bit everywhere. So to me, it just sounded more live. For example, like on the snare, when the snare comes in, usually that would, if you're listening to it and things sound more live, instead of sounding so pinpoint and that snap in that snare, it would just kind of diffuse with the rest of the music. And I don't know, that's why I had kind of a little bit of a trouble in this one. However, though, you know what, we'll call this a tie. It shows you should always listen to it because everybody's own preference is different. So for everybody out there, just listen for it for yourself. So what we did, we still gave the NAD a 4. The reason for that is it does sound very similar again to the Cambridge. However, just with a little bit less texturing, especially on the bass side. So it still did really well.
So I don't know if you were keeping your calculator handy during this whole breakdown of all of our categories, but here's the overall winner. Coming in at 36.5 over 40 points was the Cambridge Audio Evo 150. The Naim came in at a close second at 36, and the NAD came in at 33 out of 40. You may be wondering what makes the Cambridge Audio Evo 150 the overall winner. And when you consider all of our categories, so the design, the specs, the interface, and its features, and its musical performance, the Cambridge Audio comes out ahead because it has so many features to it. And its musical performance is actually very good.
Although when it came to points, the Cambridge did come out on top, however, very close to the Naim, only by half a point difference, there are some things to consider. I would say if you're the type that puts music first, maybe doesn't need those kind of features, really audition the Naim, because overall, across the board, let's say the most of the genres, two out of three, actually almost all of them, I would say the music really came out on pretty much came on top when it comes to me, and we're both of us, to musical performance. And although the NAD scored the lowest, we also have to remember that it's also priced the lowest by between 25 to 30% lower. But overall, it really held its own. And I think one big thing that it has Dirac that the other ones don't. And I think this can be the single most important feature. So for example, say that your speaker setup, your room conditions, your environment are not exactly the best. The thing is, I would say that little bit better in sound quality that the Cambridge and the Naim has, I think that Dirac trumps those two.
In all honesty, you really can't go wrong with all three of these amplifiers. They all have their shining benefits. The thing you always want to keep in mind is your connectivity needs, your usability needs, and also its musical performance. So the best way to choose, as always, is to just give them a good listen at a local dealer and see what you think.
And also in the comments, any constructive criticism we'd be more than happy to hear from you.
Thanks for watching our video today, and we'll see you in the next one.